Hey there, and welcome. So let's dive into something kind of weird. Have you ever wondered why you can notice one thing, but be totally blind to something else that's literally right in front of your face? Well, it all comes down to this incredible thing called the selective spotlight of our attention, and how our brain, decides what actually becomes our reality.
I mean, you know the feeling, right? We've all been there. You're frantically looking for your keys, you've checked the table 3 times, and then someone just casually points and says, "They're right there." And they are, right where you just looked. It feels impossible, like you should have seen them. But here's the thing. It's not really a mistake. It's actually a core feature of how your brain is wired to work.
Okay, so to really wrap our heads around this, we first got to appreciate the massive problem our brain is dealing with literally every second of the day.
Just think about it for a second. Right now, all the sights in the room, every little sound, the feeling of your clothes on your skin, not to mention all the thoughts bouncing around in your head. It is an absolute flood of information, trillions of bits of data per second. It's an overwhelming amount, way, way more than we can possibly pay attention to.
And because of that total sensory overload, our brain has to make a choice. It just can't process everything at once. It doesn't have the bandwidth. So what does it do? It has to filter. It has to pick and choose what's important enough to even notice.
So, probably the best way to picture this whole filtering thing is to think of our attention as a kind of spotlight, a mental spotlight.
Now, this actually has a name, of course. It's called selective attention. And it's basically the tool our brain uses to aim that spotlight. It shines a bright light on one specific thing, maybe it's a conversation you're having or a task you're working on, and lets you see it in high definition. Meanwhile, everything else, it just kind of fades into the background, into the dark. So, let's go back to those keys. When you miss something that seems super obvious, it's not because you're not paying attention or you're careless. Not at all. It just means your mental spotlight was pointed somewhere else. It's not a flaw in your system, it's a feature. It's a survival tool, really.
Okay, so that brings us to the really big question, right? If our brain is constantly deciding where to point this spotlight, what's in charge? What's guiding that decision? Why does one thing get lit up while something else stays in the shadows?
Well, it looks like it pretty much boils down to 3 main things, and they're mostly working behind the scenes. It's all about what we expect to see, what our brain decides is a priority, and maybe most importantly, just how busy our mind is, our mental load. So first up, let's talk about expectation. See, our brains are basically prediction machines. They're always guessing what's going to happen next. So naturally, our spotlight tends to land on things that match what we expect. But, and this is where it gets really cool, the exact opposite is also true. If something happens that totally breaks our expectations, something completely out of the blue, bam, the spotlight swings right over to it instantly.
All right, next up we've got priority. You can think of this like your brain has its own internal security guard. It's always scanning the environment for anything that it thinks is critical, either for what you're doing right now or, on a deeper level, for your survival.
And you already know what these triggers are, right? A super loud noise, a sudden movement in your peripheral vision. These things can signal danger, so they get top priority. Even emotionally charged words can grab us. But the classic example? Hearing your own name in a loud, crowded room. It's like it cuts through all the noise, doesn't it? That's because to your brain, there's no higher priority than you.
And that brings us to our third and final factor, mental load. This is a really interesting one. It's basically about how busy your mind is on the inside. How much of your brain power is already being used up by your own thoughts? Are you wrestling with a tough problem or just kind of daydreaming?
Because here's the deal. When that mental spotlight is pointed inward, when you're really, really deep in thought, the beam shining on the outside world gets super dim. And this explains so much. It's exactly why you can walk right past a good friend on the street and not even see them. It's not that you weren't looking. It's that you were looking inward. Your attention was busy somewhere else entirely.
So let's kind of pull all of this together now. Once you get these factors, it completely changes how you think about perception. It turns out we aren't just passive observers, like a camera recording the world.
There's this quote that just nails it. Perception only details the area illuminated by attention. I mean, think about that. What we experience as reality isn't everything that's out there. No way. It's just the tiny, tiny piece that our spotlight happens to be shining on at any given moment.
So it's not a recording, it's a construction. We're actively building our reality. You've got this infinite ocean of information out there. Our attention dips in and grabs a tiny little bucket full of it. And then our perception builds our entire conscious world out of just that little sample. It's pretty wild.
What this really means is that you are the director of your own experience.
Seriously, where you choose to point that spotlight from moment to moment, based on your expectations, your priorities, your thoughts, that becomes the raw material of your reality. It's an incredibly dynamic and powerful process that we're all doing all the time.
And that leads me to one last question for you. Right now, as you're finishing this up, just take a second. Notice where your spotlight is focused. And then, maybe wonder for a moment, what else is out there? Right now, just sitting in the dark.